My name is Helena Kowalski. I am 85 years old. And for 40 years I kept a secret that consumed me from the inside. Today I will tell you for the first and last time what a Nazi general did to me, and how I made sure to be seated in the front row when they hanged him. I hold this old photograph in my trembling hands. This is David, my first husband. He died in Auschwitz at 23 years old. And this. I touch my belly. This was Samuel, my son. He lived exactly 8 minutes, and in those 8 minutes, he experienced more horror than any human being should. I looked directly at the camera. You will hear things you will wish you hadn't heard. But I lived through it, and someone needs to know, because if I die without telling, that monster wins again. I take a deep breath. So I'll start from the beginning, when I still believed that life was good. It was 1939. I was 19 years old and had just married David. He was a literature professor. He read Yiddish poetry to me every morning while we drank coffee. We lived in Warsaw, in a small apartment overlooking the river. Every Friday night we observed Shabbat at my parents' house. My mother made challah, my father sang blessings. I was happy. I closed my eyes, remembering. In June I found out I was pregnant. David cried with joy. He placed his hand on my belly every night and talked to the baby, promising to teach him to read, to love books, to be a good man. I smile for the first time, but it's a sad smile. I was 3 months pregnant when I heard the first bombs. September 1st, 4:45 in the morning. David shielded me with his body when the window glass shattered. I still have a scar here. I show my arm, from that day. It was the first of many. The Germans entered Warsaw and our lives gradually ended. First came the laws. Jews can't work here, can't walk there, have to wear the yellow star. Then they closed the synagogues. They arrested men in the streets for nothing. My father was beaten for not taking off his hat quickly enough for a German soldier. I take a deep breath. In November 1940 they forced us into the ghetto. 3-meter walls, surrounded by barbed wire. 2 families sharing a room. I was 5 months pregnant and didn't have enough food. I felt my baby move inside me and cried because I couldn't feed it properly. David sold our belongings for food. First it was my grandmother's silver candlesticks. Then his books, each book broke a piece of him. Finally, he sold our wedding ring. For 3 pieces of bread. I touch my finger where the ring was. My mother died of typhus in March 1941. We didn't have a proper way to bury her. My father died 2 weeks later. I think of sadness. And me. I remained pregnant, growing thinner every day, clutching my belly and promising my baby that we would survive. July 22nd, 1942. I'll never forget that date. They began the liquidation of the ghetto. SS officers entered houses shouting Raus! Raus! Out, out! They dragged families out, shot anyone who resisted. I was 8 months pregnant, enormous. David held me and said, Helena, no matter what happens, you survive. For our child. Promise. I promised. They pushed us into cattle cars. There were more than 150 of us in a car made for 40. So cramped we couldn't sit down. No windows, no water, no toilet. Just a bucket in the corner that overflowed in the first few hours. The smell. I pause. I'll never forget that smell. Urine, feces, sweat, fear. 3 days in that car. Women were giving birth standing up, in the middle of that crowd. I saw 3 babies being born. All 3 were stillborn. The mothers were screaming and nobody could do anything. I held my belly and prayed, please God, don't let my baby be born here. Not like this. When the doors opened, the light blinded me. Guards shouting, dogs barking. people falling from the wagon. And then I saw the chimneys, smoking, and the smell, burnt flesh. I didn't know what it was yet, but my body knew. I vomited right there. They forced us into a line. There was an SS doctor doing the selection. Left or right? He looked at people for 2 seconds and decided. Left, right, left, right. When it was my turn, he looked at my enormous belly. He frowned. He pointed to the left. David was behind me. Right. I screamed, David. I tried to go back, but they pushed me. He shouted, I love you, Helena. Survive. And then we lost sight of each other. I closed my eyes. I later found out that the right was for slave labor. The left was for immediate death. But that day they made an exception for me. I don't know why. Maybe God wanted me to suffer more. Or maybe he wanted me to survive to tell the tale. I'll never know. They shaved my head. They took my clothes. They gave me a striped uniform that didn't close around my belly. They tattooed a number on my arm, 47829. I ceased to be Helena. I became a number. They put me to work in the SS laundry. 16 hours a day washing blood-stained uniforms. 9 months pregnant. My legs swelled so much that the skin cracked. They bled. But if you stopped, you were beaten. If you fell, they shot you. I met other women there. A Polish woman named Marta worked in administration. She gave me pieces of bread secretly. She said, Hold on, Jew. Your baby will be born free. I wanted to believe. Every night I talked to my baby. I touched my belly and whispered, You will see blue skies. You will play in the grass. You will laugh. Just hold on a little longer. He moved inside me and I cried with hope. It was August 1942, a week after we arrived. I was washing uniforms when I heard boots marching. Everyone stopped and stood at attention. A general entered. Tall, impeccable uniform, decorations gleaming. Blonde hair pulled back, icy blue eyes. He was inspecting the facilities. He walked through the laundry and stopped in front of me. He looked at my belly. He asked in German, How far along are you? I was trembling so much I could barely answer. 9 months, sir. He smiled. But it wasn't a human smile. It was the smile of someone who saw an opportunity. He said, What a waste to send this straight to the chamber. You could serve better before. I didn't understand. But I saw Marta's face. She turned pale. The other women did too. And then I knew something terrible was going to happen. That night, after the roll call where we stood for hours being counted, 2 guards came to get me. Number 47829, come here. I asked where to. One of them laughed and said, You're going to have a special night. My heart raced. Marta held me back before I left. She whispered in my ear, Pray to die quickly. And forgive your baby. I didn't understand at the time. I understood later. They took me through the camp. We passed the prisoners' barracks, the work blocks, until we reached the officers' quarters. Clean brick buildings, with flowers in the windows. It seemed like another world, as if hell and heaven existed side by side. They stopped in front of a door. One of the guards knocked. A voice said, Come in. They pushed me inside and closed the door behind me. And I saw him again. The general. But this time he wasn't alone. There were 4 officers in the room, drinking, smoking expensive cigars, laughing. When I entered, they all stopped and looked at me. At my belly. My voice begins to tremble. The general, I later found out his name was Klaus von Reichmann, said, Gentlemen, I've brought entertainment for the evening. Have you placed any bets? They laughed. Bets on me, on how long I could last, on whether the baby would be born during it, on how many times they could use me before I passed out. I pause, taking several deep breaths. I'll tell you what happened, but I won't describe every detail because I still have some dignity. But you need to know the essentials. They violated me. All 4 of them. 4 hours. I begged. I screamed. I said I was about to give birth. They laughed and said it was even better. Von Reichmann said, "Your Jewish body was made to serve Aryans. It's fulfilling its only purpose." And then it began. The contractions. In the midst of that nightmare, my baby decided to be born. I screamed, "The baby! The baby is coming!" For a second they stopped. Tears are streaming down my face now. I gave birth on the floor of that room. Alone. They watched as if it were a show. No help, nothing. And my baby was born. And cried. A strong, healthy cry. And I thought, for a single second of impossible hope, that maybe they would spare him. Von Reichmann bent down. He picked up my baby from the floor. He looked at him. And I saw my son for the first time. He had David's eyes, perfect hands, 10 tiny fingers. So small. So perfect. He asked, "What's his name?" I said, "Samuel. Like my father." He nodded and said, "Samuel won't grow up to contaminate the world." I can't speak for long seconds. He walked to the window. I screamed, "No, please, kill me, not him." I tried to get up, but the others held me down. And he opened the window and threw my baby from the 3rd floor. Absolute silence. I heard it. The sound of Samuel's little body hitting the concrete. I'll hear that sound until the day I die. They dragged me to the window. They forced me to look down at my son's body. So small. So broken. And then von Reichmann raped me again. From behind. Holding me by the hair, my head forced out the window looking at Samuel. And he whispered, "Look, keep looking. This is the only future for the Jews. Death. And you will live to see them all die." I stop. I wipe away the tears. And my voice changes. It becomes harder. But do you know what happened in that moment? While I was looking at my dead son and feeling that monster raping me, something inside me broke. But something else was born. Rage. Pure, cold, crystalline rage. I thought, he thinks he broke me. He thinks he destroyed me. But I will survive. I will survive not because I want to live, but because I will make him pay. No matter how long it takes. Decades if necessary. But he will pay. After that night, I became a different person. The Helena who believed in goodness died. A Helena was born who had only one purpose, revenge. They used me repeatedly in the following months. Von Reichmann would call me 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes alone, sometimes with other officers. And I let him, because while they were using me, I was studying them. I learned German by listening to them. I pretended not to understand, but I absorbed every word. I learned their full names, their ranks, their families, where they were born. I memorized everything. Marta helped me. She stole paper from the administration. And every night I wrote. Every name. Every date. Every atrocity. Physical descriptions, scars, tattoos, mannerisms. Everything that could identify them later. I hid the papers. Inside the lining of my uniform. In holes in the wall. Buried in cans. scattered in various places in case they found one. They were my only reason for living, my weapon. Von Reichmann began to use me in other ways. As an interpreter, many prisoners didn't speak German. As a messenger between officers, he thought I was broken, submissive, reliable. And I was perfectly obedient. But I was gathering information. I overheard conversations I shouldn't have heard. I saw documents I shouldn't have seen. I knew which officers were involved in which atrocities, who gave the orders, who carried them out, who watched, laughing, everything documented. In January 1945, the Soviets were closing in. High-ranking officers began to flee, burning documents, killing witnesses. Von Reichmann fled a week before the Soviets arrived. But he didn't know that Jewish woman number 47829 had evidence that he couldn't burn. January 27, 1945. I heard tanks, shouts in Russian. The last SS guards had fled or surrendered. And then Soviet soldiers entered the camp. Many wept at what they found. I was 24 years old but looked 60. I weighed 35 kilos. Thin, gray hair, teeth falling out from malnutrition. My body covered in scars and marks. But I was alive. And I had my papers. I stayed in the camp for weeks, too sick to leave. I looked up David's name on the lists. Confirmed, dead in the gas chamber the day we arrived. July 22, 1942. He survived exactly 4 hours in Auschwitz. When I recovered enough, they took me to a refugee camp. Doctors examined me. They told me I could never have children again. They destroyed me from the inside. My uterus, my ovaries, everything irreversibly damaged by the rapes, the malnutrition, the untreated infections. Samuel would have been my only child. And he lived 8 minutes. But I wasn't thinking about having children. I was thinking about justice. Or revenge. They're the same thing sometimes. I started working with Nazi hunters, organizations that tracked down fugitive war criminals. I presented my documents. They were impressed. I had names, dates, details that few survivors had managed to record. My testimony helped convict other officers, 47 in total in the following years. Doctors, guards, commanders. But von Reichmann, he had disappeared. False name, false documents, cold trail. I spent 5 years searching. I worked with Mossad, with international tribunals, with informants. I learned that many Nazis fled to South America, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay. Corrupt governments protected them. German communities hid them. It was difficult. But I didn't give up. People told me, Helena, you need to move on. Rebuild your life. And I replied, I will live. After he pays. I remarried, a survivor, too. A good man. But he knew that part of me was dead. The part that died with Samuel. 1950, 6 years after liberation. An informant in Buenos Aires sent a photo. A man of about 50, working as an accountant under the name Karl Mahler. But I recognized the eyes. Those icy blue eyes. They confirmed it was von Reichmann. Living peacefully. Beautiful house. Argentinian wife. Young son. Normal life. While Samuel rotted on the floor of Auschwitz. Mossad agents planned the capture. Drugs, kidnapping, sent back to Europe in a shipping crate. Like cattle. Like he did to us. When I learned he had been arrested, I cried. For the first time in years I cried. From relief. From anticipation. Because I knew I was going to look him in the face again. But this time I had the power. Nuremberg, 1951. International War Crimes Tribunal. I sat in the room waiting for my name to be called. I saw von Reichmann enter. Older, gray hair, trying to look dignified. But it was him, the devil in human form. They called me to testify. I stood up. My legs trembled, but I walked over there. And before speaking, I looked directly at him. Our eyes met. He recognized me. I saw the shock, then the fear. Because he realized, the broken Jewish woman survived. And she came to collect. I gave my testimony for 3 hours. Every detail, every name, every document. I brought Marta and other survivors. Physical evidence, dates, locations, exact descriptions. When I told about Samuel, about how he threw my baby out the window, the room fell into a sepulchral silence. Some judges were crying. Von Reichmann tried to deny it. He said he didn't remember. But I remembered everything. Verdict: guilty. Sentence: death. 6 months later. Execution day. I asked to be present. It was my right as a victim. I sat in the front row. He was led to the scaffold. He saw me. He tried to speak. I didn't say anything. I just looked. With the same coldness he looked at Samuel. They put on the rope. The executioner asked if he had any last words. He said, "I was just following orders. To the end, a coward." The platform opened. He fell. The rope didn't break his neck on the first try. He struggled. For 14 minutes. I counted every second. Because Samuel had 8 minutes of life. This monster had 14 minutes of agony. It seemed fair. When he stopped moving, I breathed. For the first time in 9 years, I truly breathed. Samuel was avenged. David was avenged. Everyone was avenged. I look at the camera one last time. I'm 85 years old now. I recorded this because I need someone to know. Samuel existed. Even if only for 8 minutes, he existed. And the man who killed him paid. Never forget. Never. Fade to black. The end.